Close your eyes if you like. Let your ears carry you and drift. Here we are again, me and you, back in the same room. The quiet surfaces ask nothing of us. The soft edges don't hurry us. If you want, just let your hand find the quilt and let your breath find its own pace. At the window, the same page of sky, dark, still, held in its frame like a book we're allowed to leave open. Nothing needs doing tonight. The room is here. You are here. That is the whole architecture. And on this page of sky, we'll let a single word appear, lightly, then rest again. This season we move through a hallway, one door at a time, always returning to the room. The sky remains a page we can read without finishing the book. You can notice one margin note, then step back. You can hold one image, then let it settle. Tonight, we'll open a door, step into a small space, and step back out. The hallway stays lit, the room stays close. And if you drift, that's fine. I'll stay right here by the window and keep our place. You're welcome to drift at any moment, and the page will still be here when you return. Tonight, the next door in the hallway has a simple label: inflation. Inflation, just a word for now. A gentle topic marker, not a demand for attention. We'll place it on the page of sky like a small pencil note in the margin. Something you might notice if your gaze rests there. Something you can leave alone if you prefer. It's a soft sound, a name for an idea we'll touch lightly. We're not asking you to carry it, just naming it, the way you might name a door in a hallway, before deciding whether to open it. Before we explain it, we'll keep the room steady. Here's the rhythm we'll keep. An image, then one line of meaning, then an image again. The window stays our anchor, like a lamp left on in the hallway. You can always return to it. You can always feel the quilt, the breath, the stillness of the room around the single page. We won't ask you to understand. We'll only offer a way of noticing, guided, gentle, without urgency. Now we can offer a definition, small enough to hold in one breath. The arc of this episode is simple. We'll give a definition first, then we'll say why people cared, not as alarm, just as curiosity. Then we'll mention how it's tested, like checking a margin note against the page. And we'll return to the room between each door. The path isn't linear. You're allowed to drift. If your mind wanders to the texture of the quilt or the feeling of breath, that's not a departure. That's part of the listening. So let's open the next door gently and keep the hallway lights soft. You are here. The room is held. The window frames its single page of sky, and nothing urgent is happening inside this frame. The quilt is the same weight it was. Your breath is the same rhythm. The room knows how to stay still while you listen. With the room held steady, we can define inflation in one calm sentence. Inflation is an early, stretching idea. A brief early expansion in the universe's first moments that helps organize what we see on the page of sky. That's the sentence. Now we return to the window. The page is still there, dark and patient. The definition sits on it like a small notation, something we can glance at, then let rest. We don't need to elaborate. We only needed to name it once. And as soon as the word lands, we soften it further. It isn't one locked tale. Inflation is a framework, not a single story, but a family of related models. Think of it as a hallway with many doors that share a similar floor plan. The doors differ in details, but the structure of the hallway itself offers a way to think about what we observe. This isn't confusion, it's flexibility. The framework holds space for variation, and that space is calm. You don't have to choose a door tonight. You're only walking the hallway. If it's a hallway, then the next gentle question is, why did anyone walk into it? A framework is a quiet promise. It says, here is a way to connect an idea to checks we can perform without claiming the last word. It offers structure for asking whether the page of sky matches what the framework suggests, and it stays open to revision. This is how science stays careful, not by insisting, but by offering a path and listening to what the page says back. So we'll ask what it was trying to make sense of. Soft curiosities on the page of sky. The word motivations here means curiosities, small mismatches between what we might expect and what the page of sky seems to show. Not problems, not crises, just gentle invitations to wonder whether a framework might help the page make a different kind of sense. These curiosities are like noticing that a room's corners don't quite meet the way you thought they would. You're not alarmed, you're simply noticing. We'll take the first curiosity like a quiet corner of the room, one curiosity at a time. After each, we return to the room. You don't have to hold them all at once. The page will still be there. The hallway will still be lit. You are not required to assemble a picture tonight. We'll touch one, let it settle, then touch the next. First, a horizon-sized question, held as lightly as a breath. There are 3 curiosities we'll visit. Each one is a calm observation along the hallway, something people noticed on the page of sky, something the inflation framework offers a way to think about. We won't list them now. We'll just promise gentle steps and returns, and the same soft light in the hallway. Let's start with the first curiosity and keep our hand on the doorframe. Back to the room, the window, the page of sky. These curiosities we're about to name are gentle questions. Questions we can set down at any moment. Questions that don't need answers tonight. They're observations, held lightly, like a line you can notice in the margin. Then let your eyes return to the window. We're not building a mystery. We're simply noticing. The first curiosity is about what parts of the sky seem to match each other. When we look at distant regions of the sky, regions that seem too far apart to have ever spoken to each other, they appear remarkably similar in temperature and texture. This is sometimes called the horizon curiosity. How did these distant patches come to look so alike? That's the question. We'll leave it there, like a note in the margin. The window holds the page holds the question. You hold nothing but your breath. If that's one corner of the page, the next curiosity is about how even the page feels. The universe, on the largest scales we can measure, appears nearly flat, like a floor that doesn't curve noticeably under your feet. This is the flatness curiosity. Why does the geometry of space feel so level, so close to what we might call even? Think of it like the calm surface of a room's floor, steady and undemanding. We're not explaining it yet. We're only naming the observation, then returning to the texture of the room. there's a third curiosity. Small patterns on the page that later become structure. On the skies page, there are faint variations, tiny differences in temperature and density. These are sometimes called seeds, small beginnings that, over time, grow into galaxies and clusters, into the structure the universe eventually shows. We're keeping it soft. These are beginnings, not spectacles. They're like the first pencil marks on a sketch, barely there, but able to guide what comes later. Now we can say what inflation offers. A single hallway that can connect these curiosities. Inflation, as a framework, offers a way to make these curiosities feel less surprising. It suggests a path through which the early universe might have arrived at the features we observe, without insisting this is the only path, without claiming certainty. It's a hallway we can walk through, gently, to see whether the doors it offers lead to places that match the page of sky. Once we have the hallway, the next question is, what kind of door could lead there? To describe inflation's mechanism, we'll introduce a placeholder idea, something that stands in the doorway, labeled clearly as provisional. We're not claiming to know the figure's true name. We're only saying, if such a thing were there, here's what it might allow. The word placeholder lowers the stakes. It says, this is a working label, not a final answer. Let's step into that doorway carefully, with the room still behind us. We've named 3 curiosities and 1 hallway. That's enough for tonight. The room is still here. The quilt still has the same weight. Your breath still moves at the same rhythm. Nothing has been demanded of you. The page of sky remains a single page, unfinished, patient. Back to the room, back to the window. One term at a time. We'll define it once, softly, then return to the imagery of the hallway, the page, the stillness. This is the segment where we name the mechanism. We'll move slower than usual. We'll keep the room close. The first term is just a name for a placeholder. Inflaton. The inflaton is a placeholder within the inflation framework, a hypothetical driver, not something we've directly observed, but something the framework names to organize the idea of rapid early expansion. Think of it as an unnamed figure opening a door in the hallway. We can describe what the door leads to without claiming to know the figure's true identity. This is a placeholder. That word appears twice in tone because it matters. We're not presenting a character. We're offering a label for a role. If that placeholder helps the hallway make sense, we also need a gentle way back to the room we recognize. Reheating is the soft transition, the way the framework describes the universe moving from the inflationary phase back into the more familiar contents, particles, radiation, warmth. Think of it like warmth returning to a room after a window is briefly opened to the cold. It's not a spectacle. It's a handoff, gentle and domestic, from one state to another. And because it's a framework, the question becomes, how do we check any of this? The word tests here means gentle, slow checks. Patterns we can look for on the skies page. Constraints we can write in the margins. Not conclusions we force, not proofs we demand. Just careful listening to see whether the page matches what the framework suggests. The checks take time. They require patience. They're written lightly, and they can be revised. Those checks lead naturally to what we can measure on the skies page. the inflaton, the reheating. These are parts of a story we hold lightly. The framework proposes them, but the page of sky gets the final vote. If the page suggests something different, the framework adjusts or steps aside. Uncertainty here is normal. It's calm. It's how careful thinking works. So next, we'll walk to the evidence door, where the hallway meets the page. We're moving from mechanism to measurement now, one quiet imprint at a time. The room will stay close. The window will stay in view. You are not required to hold all the pieces at once. We'll open the evidence door slowly and read what the page of sky is willing to show. Room, window, page of sky. Evidence in this context means constraints, gentle limits on what the framework can propose based on what the page actually shows. We're listening the way you'd listen to a friend in the dark, patiently, without pushing, without interrupts. The page of sky here is the cosmic microwave background, the earliest light we can observe, carrying statistical fingerprints that guide what models feel plausible. It's the oldest readable surface, like the first page in a very long book. The first margin note we'll touch is a single symbol, N sub S. The scalar spectral index, N sub S, is a way of describing how the patterns on the page of sky lean, whether the small-scale variations are slightly stronger or weaker than the large-scale ones. It's a single number that summarizes a tilt, and the measured value helps narrow which inflation models feel consistent with what we observe. One line, that's the definition. Now back to the window, where the page rests without demanding anything further. From that one symbol, we shift to a gentler question about how random the page looks. Gaussianity. Limits describe how the texture on the page of sky is checked for certain kinds of statistical simplicity. If the variations were perfectly random in a specific mathematical way, we'd call them Gaussian. The limits tell us how close the observed patterns come to that kind of randomness, and whether there are subtle departures. Think of it like checking whether a fabric's weave is smooth or slightly irregular. Not a judgment, just a description. And then, one more imprint people listen for, quietly and with patience. B modes are a particular pattern in the polarization of light on the page of sky, a kind of twist that certain inflation models predict. They have not yet been detected. This simply means the page is still being read, and the instrument is still resting against the surface, listening. Not yet is normal time. It's not disappointment. It's the rhythm of patient observation. To keep reading that page, people build instruments that listen in very steady ways. The Simons Observatory is one of those listeners, a ground-based set of telescopes designed for ongoing, careful observation of the cosmic microwave background. Think of it as the hallway's steady light through the night, steady and reliable, collecting data without rushing to conclusions. Operations continue. Listening continues. The page is read slowly. Another listener is space-based, designed for a different kind of quiet. Lightbird is a planned space mission, currently in preparation, designed to measure polarization patterns on the page of sky with particular care. It's a note tucked into the margin for later, a future reading of the page, held as a calm milestone rather than a race toward discovery. Someday, not urgently, the page will still be there, and as instruments change, The roadmap changes too, without urgency. After CMB, S4 could not move forward as a project. The roadmap for some large-scale observational efforts shifted. A shift, not a crisis. A pause, not an ending. All of this sits inside a bigger idea. Inflation isn't one room. It's a landscape of rooms. The inflation framework contains many variations, different models, different parameters, different predictions. This is sometimes called the landscape, a wide space of possibilities, with the page of sky used to narrow what feels plausible. It's not a single room. It's a hallway with many doors, and the page helps us see which doors might open into a story that matches what we observe. Many doors, same hallway. The architecture stays flexible, and at the frontier, there's even a gentle debate about which doors really belong in the building. Swampland is a term from ongoing theoretical discussions, a debate about which kinds of frameworks might be allowed or disallowed by deeper principles. It's a scholarly conversation, slow and careful, about the boundaries of what models can propose. We're not taking sides. We're only naming the debate, then stepping back into the room, where the page of sky rests without asking you to join the argument. With those frontier notes placed, we can step back into the season's larger hallway. Back to the room, fully back, the quilt under your hand, your breath moving softly, the window holding its single page of sky. Inflation, in this episode, is a framework we visited, not a verdict we carry. It's a hallway we walked through, a set of doors we named, and now we can step back into the room and let it rest. In the season's hallway, this framework is one doorway among others. Inflation connects earlier questions we touched in other episodes, to later stories we'll tell about structure, about galaxies, about how the universe came to look the way it does. But tonight, we only rest beside the connection. We don't need to walk the whole hallway. Later is permission, not suspense. The hallway will still be here, and we can remember. What keeps it honest are the slow checks on the page of sky. The scalar spectral index, N sub S, is one of those checks, a single symbol in the margin, holding the framework accountable to what the page actually shows. We're not redefining it. We're only touching it lightly, like a familiar object on a shelf, and then returning immediately to the view from the window. At the frontier, listening continues, patiently, without demanding anything of you. The Simons Observatory keeps its steady watch, like the soft light we left on in the hallway. No drama, no urgency, just careful, ongoing observation of the cosmic, microwave backgrounds patterns. The listening is warm and quiet. It asks nothing of you tonight, and another hook sits further out, like a note tucked into the margin for later. Lightbird waits in the planning stages, a future mission, a someday reading of the page. Not an event to anticipate with urgency, just a gentle reference point, placed calmly in time. The page will be there when the mission arrives. The room will be here when you wake. Even the roadmap can shift, and the room remains the same. The roadmap shift after CMB, S4, is a calm example of how science replans, how one door in the hallway closes while others remain open without shaking the building. Priorities change, resources move, the care continues. This is continuity, not disruption. The hallway adapts, the room stays still, and because inflation is a landscape, not a single room, debates can exist without shaking the building. Swampland. A debate about boundaries, about what frameworks might be theoretically allowed. One line, that's enough. The conversation continues elsewhere, scholarly and slow, and you are not required to enter it. The page of sky dissolves back into the window's frame, patient and undemanding, which means tonight you are not required to choose a door. We close the hallway door. We stay in the room. The sky remains a single page, unfinished, unforced, and enough. The quilt has the same weight. Your breath has the same rhythm. The window holds the same frame. You are here. The room is here. Nothing is asking anything of you, and we'll simply rest here. I'll keep the hallway light low. You just keep resting here on this one page of sky.